All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Chris Callanan. I'm a community engagement specialist with the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. Um, as a reminder, the Lowville and Elyria Swansea Community Advisory Group, or GES CAG, is a group that the department at DOTI, we convene on a month-to-month basis at a regular cadence to get input on different projects, programs, services that are occurring within our department. And we have quite a few different projects. Before we get too far into it, I do want to hand it over to Francisco so that he can explain the Spanish language interpretation.
Thank you, Chris. And good evening, everybody. My name is Francisco Picado. I'm from Language Access LLC. I'll be one of your interpreters tonight. As part of DOTI's efforts to reach out to as broad a segment of the community as possible, DOTI offers interpretation for these meetings. If you have never gotten a chance to use this service, please click on the bottom right of your screen on the interpretation globe and select the language of your choice. Bienvenidos a todos, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Francisco Picado, yo trabajo para Language Access LLC y yo seré uno de sus intérpretes esta noche. DOTI hace un esfuerzo extraordinario por alcanzar a los sectores más amplios de la comunidad y esto incluye y por eso ofrece interpretación en estas reuniones. Si nunca ha usado este servicio, por favor, pulse el icono del globo en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Francisco. All right. So, again, thank you so much for attending the meeting this evening. We are going to be talking about a very exciting project. That's the North Denver Safer Streets project, where a variety of different improvements are going to be planned, designed, and delivered here within a relatively short period of time in the scale of government. So wanted to welcome everybody, and especially Councilman Watson. Appreciate you attending this meeting. We have a couple of different agenda items. We're going to be doing an overview of the North Denver Safer Streets program. And then we'll be going into construction updates after our workshop. And then we'll kind of go over what our next meeting looks like for future outreach here. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Paige to get started with the North Denver Safer Streets presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Paige Colton, and I'm a transportation planner with the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. I've presented to this group a couple times, past couple of meetings, so thanks for joining again. There might be a little repeat of information, but we're sharing new information today. And then we're going to have a larger discussion altogether to learn about your priorities. So thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate it. So as I mentioned, just going to give an overview of the project. This might be a little repetitive, but stick with me. Going to go into some detail about existing conditions information that has been summarized in past plans. And then we've also collected some additional traffic data that we want to share with you. We're going to be talking through our engagement strategy over the next month or so and getting your feedback on that. And then we have a discussion activity where we're going to be talking through different priorities. Next slide. Okay, so starting with this high-level summary. Next slide. So North Denver Safer Streets is focusing on the Gloveville and Elyria Swansea neighborhoods. And that's just really, that's all the business map shows, the boundaries of the two neighborhoods, in addition to some arrows in and out. Those are really meant to emphasize that we're not just thinking about how you're moving around the neighborhoods, but also how you're connecting to adjacent neighborhoods and cities as well. So we want to think about both of those things. Next. And in terms of project goals, First major project goals, we want to build on past planning work. So we know a lot of great feedback and planning and visioning has already been done on connectivity challenges in this area. But we also want to make sure that those are still the priority projects. Those are still the needs that have been identified in the past. Are there any new needs? And then figuring out how with you all to creatively address those needs. Second major goal is to deliver small-scale multimodal transportation improvements within 3 years. So we're going to be building improvements over the next, planning and designing projects over the next couple of years, and then building them in the couple of years after that. So we have dollars lined up to do all of those phases. We're really excited. And when I say small-scale improvements, just to contextualize that, this isn't like the big Washington Street reconstruction. This is adding speed cushions, adding crossings to help kids get to school, that sort of thing. We're also looking to progress on some planning and early design on some larger scale improvements. So just starting those processes like a local bus rapid transit corridor. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then lastly, we just want to make sure we're reaching diverse group of people within your community, have an equitable engagement process. Okay, next slide. You're eager to get to that slide. It's a great slide. Lots of pretty pictures. So kind of diving in a little bit more. So we've heard a lot of different concerns, a lot of different multimodal transportation, general street concerns in the neighborhood. And these are the areas where we're going to be focusing on with this project. So we're going to be focusing on making crossing safer for people walking and biking and scooting. We're going to work on slowing vehicle speeds, especially on neighborhood streets where you have a lot of people walking and biking and wanting to feel safe on their streets. We want to reduce cut-through traffic. So are there streets where there's a lot of extra traffic that doesn't really need to be there? Is there a lot of extra truck traffic on those streets? Maybe we can reduce some of that. Looking at where we can separate people driving from people biking and walking and scooting. So in bike lanes or walk lanes, kind of some different options there. We're going to be looking at making bus stops more accessible. So that's adding an actual pad where the bus stop is rather than it just being in dirt. And then lastly, addressing streets that are hot to travel on, that have icy or flooding conditions, and just adding more greenery. So those are our main focus areas. And this is kind of what the improvements might look like. Next slide. Okay, so just a quick summary of past planning work that we're incorporating into this process and considering before we go to you all and ask you how you want to prioritize projects. This is a kind of just a list of all the past planning work that we've incorporated, some to highlight the Globeville Neighborhood Plan, the Elaria and Swansea Neighborhoods Plan, the Washington area prioritization study, Denver Moves Bikes update, Denver Moves Everyone, which is our citywide transportation plan. So many, many more, but we're looking at these and what connectivity issues have been discussed and prioritized in the past. Okay, next slide. Okay, so project schedule. We are in this prioritized community needs on the far left box there. So building on the past planning work and collaborating with you all to prioritize and figure out how to phase projects that we're going to be building. Starting later this spring, we'll be developing design solutions. So getting more into the nitty gritty, where would improvements go? What should they look like? What would best meet the needs of the community? Then starting this summer, working to refine those designs. So that's a lot of engineering work. I'm not an engineer, so nitty gritty stuff. but we still want to come back to you and consult on those specific project designs and make sure they're looking and feeling like you would like. And then lastly, starting fall 2026 for the next couple of years, working on construction. Again, because these projects aren't those big street reconstruction, they should not be as impactful, but we definitely want to make sure we're informing the neighborhood of those projects and when they're coming in. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through a couple existing condition slides. Some of these came out of the Washington area prioritization study, and then some of them are based on some information we've recently collected just to kind of summarize the transportation picture that we're seeing, and I'm curious to hear if that's what you're also experiencing. Next slide. So starting with network reliance on Washington, Brighton, and York to get in and out of the neighborhood. Then, of course, the freight routing challenges, lots of industry, I-25 and I-70, kind of a limited local road network, makes it kind of challenging to figure out where trucks should be routed. Next slide. In terms of connectivity for people biking and scooting, also pretty limited, you know, a lot of barriers to that movement. We've got the South Platte River Trail, which is really great, but access to that isn't. We've got some really big projects identified, like underpasses and bridges, which are pretty long-term vision, long-term projects that we won't be able to address with this project. But there are definitely a lot of opportunity to improve connection for people biking and scooting. We've also got, of course, lack of sidewalks, a lot of missing sidewalks, a lot of sidewalks that are too narrow to comfortably walk along. Next slide. And then we took a look more specifically at the crash data for the past 5 years. This is kind of how we typically do this evaluation, just to see where we're seeing dangerous hotspots. Definitely happy to talk through this map with anyone who wants to get into the details. But at a high level, the purple dots are where we're seeing crashes that are really serious. So someone's seriously injured or maybe a fatality. Those are the purple dots. The larger the dot, the higher concentration of crashes there are. And then the blue dots are crashes involving someone walking or biking or scooting. And we really want to look at those because we consider those, we call them our vulnerable road users. You know, if you're walking or biking, you're much more vulnerable to getting hurt worse than if you're in a car and kind of protected by a car. So that's why we focus on those. In terms of speeds and volumes, so last fall we laid out tubes in a number of streets around the neighborhood, and that allows us to look at how many cars are passing over those tubes, cars and trucks. It also allows us to look at how fast those cars and trucks are going, and we're actually able to distinguish type of vehicles. So we're able to look at, are these just personal vehicles or are they larger vehicles like trucks? And one of the main takeaways of that was that the majority of drivers are going over 25 miles per hour, especially on some of these local streets, neighborhood streets. And the speed limit citywide was recently changed to 20 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. So a lot of speeding going over the speed limit. And we really want to bring speeds down, especially on those local streets, because crashes that happen at higher speeds are more likely to result in more serious crashes. We're also seeing on streets, some of those local streets with really low traffic volumes, we're seeing even higher speeds. And that's just something we sometimes see where when you don't have a lot of traffic, people feel entitled to go a lot faster, or don't feel as concerned about going a lot faster. Next slide. Lastly, I'll just point out, highlight the existing transit network. So we've got a number of bus routes and light rail and commuter rail that run through the area. Not always the most direct. Certainly, some of the transit stations are hard to access. And then that dotted red line through that area, that's the proposed rapid bus line that we're looking at getting feedback on. Is that of interest to the community? And that would connect downtown to Green Valley Ranch as it's currently envisioned. And that could definitely change based on feedback. And same with that route that we're showing. Okay, next slide. So done with existing conditions. Wanted to highlight this network of priority streets map that we've developed. And this is really a map of all the streets that we've heard. There are major concerns for people walking, biking, scooting, driving, all the ways of getting around. These are the streets we've heard from past plans are the community's priority. So all the lines on this map are those priority streets. The green lines are streets where there's already a funded project that's underway, or there's something that was recently improvement that was recently completed there. The purple lines are lines that indicate future connections. So we know these are priority streets, but they require really big investments, and we're just not able to tackle those with North Denver Safer Streets. So we've highlighted them in purple just to show that we know they're still a priority, but we probably won't be able to tackle them. And then the blue streets are the majority of the streets here, ones we've heard are priority streets, and ones that we think we could make improvements on. So those are the streets we really want to direct the community's attention to over the next month and get feedback on priorities. Okay, next slide. Oh, you can skip this one. I went through it already. Okay, so the last of my slides, and wanted to also get a poll up as well. So the city went through a citywide transportation planning process a couple of years ago. And the goal was to set a vision for the city's transportation network, how we want to travel in the future, all the way through 2050 is what we looked at. So big visioning process. How should our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure spend money over the next 30 years to make sure this vision actually happens? And we have these goals that came out of that process: mobility, safety, sustainability, community, and quality. And these are the main goals that the community, Denverites as a whole, told us these are the most important to us. We also heard that equity needs to be woven in to all of those. So that's a priority kind of regardless. And then we have all the other priorities as well. So I pulled out the outcomes that we might be able to affect with North Denver Safer Streets per each of these goals. And then I'm gonna kind of read those out to you, and like to take a minute for you to participate in this poll and tell us, help us rank these. So which of these main goals do you think is most important, which is least important? And that'll help us to kind of understand your priorities and make sure we're addressing them with this project. So for mobility, we have expand affordable travel opportunities, prioritize those walking, rolling, biking, using scooters or taking transit, working to reduce the burden of freight movement, connecting those who live and work in Gloville and Elaria Swansea with areas surrounding those neighborhoods. So that's mobility. Then safety, we have making neighborhoods more comfortable and secure for all, and redesigning streets in North Denver for safe speeds. We've got sustainability, so reducing the urban heat island effect in the neighborhoods. So how hot it is, basically, improving localized air quality, and helping mitigate and protect communities vulnerable to climate change. Then we've got the community goal, use inclusive engagement strategies to collaborate with residents, transform streets as places for people, and help repair harm and alleviate the burden created by past transportation decisions. And then we've got quality, upgrade the multimodal transportation network. So that's about how nice and kind of maintained the network is, and then directing freight to arterial and collector street network. And we're only having you, again, rank those 5. Equity is woven throughout, and that's always a priority for us. So I'll give you all a minute to answer that question.
And I did launch that poll while Paige was going over that. And we have, I think, 2 responses right now.
I'm not seeing any poll on my monitor. Where do I find it?
Interesting. It should have popped up as a window.
Oh, it popped up and went away, but is there a link on the?
It does say get QR code, so let me see if that will give us a link. AE, if you scan the QR code in the chat, does that open it up for you?
I clicked on it. We'll see what happens. I don't have my phone or anything. Just keep going, Chris. I can insert anything later.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so passing on to Jenna now. Thanks for responding to the poll, and we'll share those out.
Hey, everyone.
I
Can everyone hear
started
me?
doing the survey, but it didn't let me finish and it just like disappeared.
I'm gonna click relaunch poll. Folks have that now?
Maybe we pause another minute.
Yeah.
It popped up again.
Yeah. Okay. I just couldn't do it at the same time that I was trying to press unmute, but it let me submit. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Do we want to give a little bit longer, or should I move forward?
AE, do you want to submit? Perfect.
It just registered up here again, so it's in.
Awesome. And we'll be able to combine both of those results. So appreciate your patience on that. Go ahead, Jenna.
Sweet. So, unlike Paige, I haven't met with this group before. My name is Jenna. I work at DOTI with Paige, and I'm working on the North Denver Safer Streets project on the plan side of things, but more specifically within the public outreach aspect for the project. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit more about the outreach schedule, outreach tactics, our Survey 1, as well as our community-based outreach partners, otherwise known as CBOPs. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so outreach tactics. Throughout the North Denver Safer Streets project, we'll be using a variety of different outreach tactics to help inform the community members about it. So we understand that this area is historically marginalized. We understand that there's a lot of hardships in this area too. So we really wanted to make sure that we were using multiple tactics to meet community members where they are. And we plan to continually monitor this and pivot our engagement strategy as needed to make sure we are meeting those needs of the community. So we've launched our project website earlier this month, which you can see up here on the left in that photo, along with the project hotline and email, which we monitor daily. We also do have staff that are bilingual, which enables us to facilitate and communicate effectively with most members of the public in the GES neighborhoods. And most, if not all, of our content will also be translated in both languages. Next slide. All right, so outreach schedule. So our outreach has begun. This is the first phase when we're reintroducing the project to stakeholders already familiar with the project and past planning efforts, such as yourselves in this group, but also introducing the project to new stakeholders and community members. So to better understand the concerns and experiences, we're gathering input using a survey that is bilingual, outreach events, and some of those you could see here confirmed on the screen. The focus of the survey is to kind of just better understand where
Excuse me, I'm
residents...
sorry, Fernando. I'm sorry to interrupt. I am hearing only Spanish and no English.
AE, do you mind trying to switch to the Spanish language channel? Rebecca's having the same challenge. I don't know if anyone else is. That's a little odd. Feels like a glitch.
Now I'm hearing you, Chris. You all
Okay.
English was in the background. Let's see what happens.
Sweet. Can you all hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
That's very
Cool.
odd.
Yeah, very odd. Sorry about that. Let's see, where was I? So the focus of the first survey in this area is to better understand where the residents and people traveling through or within GES experience safety challenges such as speeding, cut through traffic, pedestrian crossings, and then also protection for bikes and scooterers. Additionally, you'll see here at the bottom, we'll be hosting office hours as well on Tuesdays and Thursdays that you can sign up for at that link that's included, which we'll be passing on at the end of this meeting. But this would just be a really good time to get some questions answered, give feedback to someone on the project team. And these will also be available in Spanish, but we just ask that people schedule a week in advance so we can make sure one of our bilingual staff members are available for that. Next slide. Yeah, so community-based outreach partners. So essentially what CBOPs are is they are local organizations that are located in these areas. So in Globeville and or Elyria, Swansea, and we work with them to find and promote community engagement opportunities, to collaborate better with the community, to make sure that the questions we're asking are questions that help us get to the answers we need, and also to help us document feedback. We know that there's always been a little bit of an issue with government trust in different areas. And so having these people that are familiar faces will be really helpful with establishing ourselves in the neighborhood. And so the organizations that we will be working with are Globeville First and then Prodigy Coffee. And this graphic here is just kind of to visualize how the CBOPs work with everything. Ooh, the screen zoomed in. You're all good. We chose a bike for the graphic though. And essentially the way that it works is DOTI putting on the project is kind of like the frame of the bike with the rest of the project teams being the pedals, helping it move. And then realistically, the CBOPs are really helping us move along and make a difference in this area. Excellent. Yeah, so this is the screenshot of the project map that Paige mentioned before and also showed before, and we'll be using this one in our in-person outreach. So you'll see a second legend. Paige referred to the legend on the bottom right, but there's a second legend on the top that's replacing dots on the map to indicate where residents experience transportation problems. So for example, if you recognize speeding on somewhere like 45th Avenue as a concern, you could put a sticker on that specific corridor. So you do the green sticker on there, and that's indicating what concern you have and where specifically it is. So this input's really helpful for us. It'll inform a lot of the improvements North Denver Safer Streets can do. The map is also really big, so it has a lot of room for a lot of people to use it. And we'll also have different aerial versions for specific neighborhood discussions as well. You could skip this slide. See, there we go. Yeah, so the survey is now live, which is really exciting. We're asking that people take the survey and share it with colleagues and network, friends, family within the area. And the purpose of the survey is really, it includes an iteration of the map above, and it's to identify the areas in which you experience challenges with the crossing the street, where maybe you see car speeding or you see freight challenges, or where more protection for walkers or bikers can be. And then lastly, maybe you see water pooling or ice in a really big area, or places where you think can have shade. The survey will have 8 different questions and is designed to give really useful feedback to us on where you want us to focus on these improvements that we're able to do. So it should be posted on the project website, but we will share the links also after this meeting. And then, yeah. Paige, I will welcome you back to the floor.
Yes. Thank you, Jenna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're just going to actually have one breakout group tonight, but we wanted to walk through kind of the main survey questions and facilitate a discussion about the transportation concerns that Jenna had mentioned, and then where we should be focusing. So I think that's it. I don't even need to say all these things on the slide if you want to jump to the mural board, Chris.
Awesome. And Paige, do you want to facilitate, or would you like me to? I can also just do the screen control if you'd like to facilitate.
Sure, happy to facilitate. And I know we only have a couple folks on here, so are there any particular questions? So actually, maybe we zoom out, Chris, and look at all the different questions, and we can say, what do we want to talk about right now? And we can continue this conversation at another time with a bigger group as well. But we've got where we're seeing speeding, where we're seeing a lot of traffic or freight cut through traffic. We've got where we seeing where do we need improved crossings for people walking and biking. We have what transit stops do we want to be making improvements to, and where we want to be thinking about that bus rapid transit or that specific transit route that I had mentioned earlier, where we want to separate people walking and biking from drivers, and kind of a green infrastructure question. So where is it really hot or icy or flooding? And we want to add some greenery.
I'm going to use a different screen sharing function so that it's a little bit better for the aspect ratio. Angela, AE, Rebecca, do you have any place that you'd like to start?
I would like to focus on congestion.
Okay. Let's go over there.
I don't know if you have a preference, AE, but I'm willing to start wherever.
No, I have no preference, but I do have one quick question here. On the current conditions, I may not have been able to see it on the legend. What is the what time period does that cover? That showed the various statistics of wrecks and things like that. Do you have that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so we look at the past 5 years. So it's 2020 to 2024. And I can send that out to you.
Well, you just
you
just
can
add
look
it to the go ahead and add it to the graphic for the general good. That's my that'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah,
But I
can
do want to make a strategic suggestion, given the current state of things in the United States. I think you should stop the recording every time you use the term equity, so we don't get shut down. And I'm joking, but I had to say something.
Thanks. Appreciate the levity.
yeah. Laugh so we don't cry. Yeah.
All right. So I might just start zooming in a little bit closer and maybe we can go region by region.
Yeah. And when we say congestion, we're really looking at where is there a lot of traffic that we don't want, past schools, past parks, past, on streets where we have a lot of retail and we want to be walking. And then where are we seeing that freight cut through traffic as well that we don't want on neighborhood streets?
You're making the Post-its. We're talking, right?
Yeah, you just talk. We're somebody's in the background adding Post-its and writing down everything.
So something that I just kind of wanted to mention too before we start this. So maybe it's a question too. So when the, let's say, safety measures start to get implemented and you start, fixing streets or what have you, does the community get a say on what kind of strategies you use? Is there going to be a survey? Like, would you rather, for example, have a roundabout or would you rather see a speed bump? Will there be any kind of follow-up surveys before you actually start work?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. And
okay.
So right now we're just looking at what streets we want to prioritize. What are the specific issues? So that's over the next month. And then starting in May, we will have collected all that information. We'll also have added what we're seeing, where we're seeing crashes and speeding and all that information that I talked about. And we'll combine that and we'll propose where we think generally improvements, where you want improvements, and then we'll come back to you, that's in May, and say, are these the right improvements? Are these the right locations? We should talk about some of these trade-offs that we're going to be seeing with some of these types of projects and decide as a community what we want to prioritize. So that's our May outreach, and that's definitely a big part of this, is we want to make sure we're doing what's desired. And then in the summer, we'll come back again and be like, hey, so we decided on all this together. Is this still the right thing? Do we still want to move forward? So that's the plan of attack.
Thank you for answering that. That's very good to know. So kind of one thing that comes to mind, and it might be because, I live there, but on Broadway, starting up from 46th all the way up to 51st, well, even 52nd, there's a lot of industrial traffic, big semi trucks, and even just like regular, cars that go by. But it seems, since it's alongside of the highway, I feel like the speed limit, I feel like a lot of folks think it's higher than what it actually is. And it doesn't help that they see, a bunch of warehouses, mixed in the residential area. But this is something that I have noticed since, for decades, that we experience a lot of heavy traffic from semi trucks, and people ignore the stop sign that's right there on it's 50th. But yeah, we have a lot of people that ignore that stop sign. So
And are you talking about on Lincoln, Rebecca?
No,
Or
it's on Broadway. So
oh,
it would be the stop sign. Well, the one going north on 50th and Broadway gets passed more than the one going south on Broadway. A lot of people tend to run that stop sign, and I mean, it's the middle of the day, you know, and you just see people just run right through it.
okay.
There has been some police seen there, not really recently, but I know they used to sit back there in the warehouse. And funny enough, when they're there, it seems like nobody's doing that. But when they're not there, we see it happen a lot.
Okay, so you're talking up here, up north.
Yeah, right on 50. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that there's that, like, there's almost an industrial park up here in Adams County.
You think that's driving a lot of the truck traffic up there?
Yeah, I've heard this feedback quite a bit, and I know that I think Amazon has their Amazon Fresh location up there, so there's a lot of vehicles kind of being dispatched from in another county, but kind of coming through Denver, especially to access the highway.
Yeah, because there's two Broadways, right? So there's North Broadway, which is on the east side of I-25, and then you have another Broadway that is on the west side of I-25. So the Broadway on the west side of I-25, you know, is more ideal for industrial traveling. But we get a lot of that traffic on the other side of Broadway, and I feel like it's most of the time it's because they should be on the other side of the highway. That's just kind of my thoughts because I know a lot of people get lost and go the other direction when they're trying to find my house. So
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
know, not it's not my feedback, but I do know I've worked with a resident just here, kind of by I-70 in Washington here, who
mhm.
um actually had a freight truck, like a semi, end up in this kind of area, and it took off the front of his garage. Um, so I did want to, I know it's not exactly, um, he's not here right now, but I do know that this kind of freight traffic issue and having semi trucks kind of get accidentally into the neighborhood has been an issue that's been flagged for me as I've been in community.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Washington is more ideal for, I mean, Washington's a very main street. I feel more, well, it's kind of, you know, both ways, but Broadway's a real busy street too, because it's leading, you know, towards those other warehouses and industrial businesses. And then you can also get on I-25 going up to 58th Avenue. So I know that's, you know, how we get a lot of traffic. And then we have the one exit on 48th coming from I-25 going southbound. So that kind of create, you know, and then you have 48th Avenue. So that creates a lot. But I feel like a lot of that could be avoided. I don't know how we can try to voice for that. I don't know if you have any thoughts for that either. Because this has been brought up, you know, a lot of times. And even there's like a barricade, but it's so small, you can literally swing your leg over and you're on the highway. So there's a lot of safety concerns behind Broadway as well, going towards I-25. So because
Can I
what I
pick,
was told from, I believe it was from CDOT, is they wouldn't be able to do any like barrier walls unless there was construction being done on I-25. So since it currently there was no construction going on, they wouldn't be able to put barriers.
Interesting.
can I piggyback on what Becca's saying there a little bit at 48th and Broadway, where the railroad tracks. There's a lot of confusion with drivers coming through that kind of take a little shortcut at the end of Leaf, headed north on Leaf, for example. You turn left, it's just dirt by the railroad track. Very treacherous at night. And I think immediate signage could happen on that. And I second everything Becca's saying about the Broadway. Even with the categories, I wish we could do, for lack of a better word, some immediate for soft signage, get some signage in now, get some striping in now. There's things that can be done to create alerts prior to the infrastructure work. I think it can be done, and it's been talked about a lot. I've had to stop myself several times from going to different parts of Denver and stealing the flashing solar stop signs that are at very well taken care of neighborhoods. And we've been talking about this for years. It's a terribly dangerous situation in Gloveville and other neighborhoods, but we're talking about Gloveville. That to me is something, why do we need to wait? There's a tradition of joking around, sitting on the steps, counting the cars that go by. We've done that at Grant and 45th at the rec center there that go through the stop signs. Everyone has stories, and it's incomprehensible to me why something hasn't been done. And it's not even when people are speeding or there's poor lighting. There's things that are cumulatively making it so that it's easy to miss the stop signs. And lastly, I think it would be great to put up signs that said no for the large trucks and anything commercial, or it would include anybody, but no idling, no stationary idling within neighborhood boundaries. It is the case that people have had to get up and shut their windows, and I don't know why trucks stop and idle at the different times they do, but I've noticed that. And many years ago, right at the same time as the neighborhood plan was being discussed here in Gloveville, there was a tremendous amount of attention spent to wayfinding and putting on restrictions. And there were some signs put up, and just from having been around pretty consistently, I do not see enforcement. I do not see, these are carryovers. This is not NDSS's created. You are not the negligent ones in this, but there's no reason that I can think of that these things couldn't be brought more actively forward. This is something that can be installed, signage, enforcements, striping, blockades that can be moved easily when construction starts. But I've had people actually have breathing, friends in truck stops and idles, and they go and they get their inhaler and shut their windows. That should just never happen. So anyway, I hope you'll just kind of add those to the priority list.
No, right. Yeah. Kind of mindful of the fact that folks like in this area might not have air conditioning during the summer, need to keep their windows open.
You know what, Chris, that's true, but so what? It shouldn't happen. Even if it just shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
That exacerbates it. So we can put it in those terms.
Yeah.
But it's not, it just shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
A follow-up question for you. The signs that aren't being enforced, or not being followed, are those the truck routing signs, or are there other signs out there that you're noticing aren't being followed?
Well, the stop signs and the truck routing.
Oh, stop signs, definitely.
Yeah.
The
truck routing signs along Grant headed, up and down Grant between 44th and I know for sure, because I guess that's the porches I've been on the most when the trucks come through. I can't frankly remember where the signs are. I guess they're still there. They're not real obvious, but I also think there might be something that can happen where the city officials in the departments or city council communicate with the business owners in those areas to emphasize or memo them, or do a series of correspondence in advocacy of changing the behavior.
Yeah.
after the signs go up and it's formally posted, so that there's no excuse for not seeing it.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Angela, I know that you're often like transiting this area around 45th and Broadway and I-70 in Lincoln on foot. I'm curious if you have any thoughts.
Always keep your eyes out. Make sure big trucks are not going to run you over. That's the biggest thing. Anybody living in GES knows if you're walking, always look over your shoulder for those big butt trucks, because they don't care. They just don't care.
Yeah. And then zooming out, I'm curious if there are any other areas that folks are kind of concerned about with congestion, but we can talk about all of these different dynamics just on this one map.
I'm not sure if this falls under congestion, but at 47th and Washington, at that intersection by the 7-Eleven,
Yep.
it's a longstanding aspiration, to use the jargon, for people in the neighborhood, for there to be as you're headed east, a right turn lane put there, because a lot of people commute down. There's a lot of times the traffic is backed up at that light. There'll be times when people come from the homes west of Washington, headed to work, and they get onto 47th because the light is there, and they'll literally be backed up all the way past Transfiguration Church, waiting for the light to change, and they're actually commuters. And so the right-hand lane turn has been something that was discussed long ago. I think it's being noted by the various planners, et cetera, but it would be great if we could speed that up a little bit. But have seen numerous times, actually about 3 times now, at that intersection where a large truck pulls up, let's say a truck headed south, stops at the light, somebody's in a wheelchair, a walker, or for whatever reason is walking slowly, and then to the right of the truck on the west side, another car has pulled up that can't see around the front of the truck. People are trying to get across the intersection, the light changes, and the pedestrian coming across the street, headed from the east to the west, is in a very dangerous situation, because people can't see around the truck or the larger vehicle. And I feel like that could be remedied with some kind of signage or lighting, flashing, or I just think we've been really lucky. I've seen that at least 3 times in the last 4 or 5 months, where somebody's didn't quite make the light, and do you understand? Does somebody there that's taking notes understand what I'm talking about? Am I describing that clearly enough? I'm not hearing anybody. So.
I've heard this feedback quite a bit, EE, so
Well,
I can definitely, yeah.
So you understand it,
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. And I think it would be really great if we could remedy some of these things. Let's create an acceleration on things that can be, where we don't have to wait for the entire. I know this has been discussed at least back to 2012, 2013.
Yeah. So addition to the 47th, that's a huge one. And also 51st. So the same thing, so I think a lot of traffic goes down 45th for the simple fact that 45th is the only main street that does have the green turning arrow. So that kind of creates a lot of congestion, especially when the school lets out at Garden Place, it creates a lot of congestion too, 45th to Lincoln.
Yeah, because you're so right. I mean, I know that for me, when I'm driving, like my behavior changes based on like the signals that are there, and what you choose to use, because it feels more manageable.
Yeah, because you take the risk of going to 47th, depending on, especially around like noontime, there's a lot of traffic, and even more so, towards the evening time. So it's like, do you take the risk of waiting at the 47th stoplight, you know, and you might not be able to make it for a few lights. And 51st, in fact, I hardly ever go to 51st just for that same reason.
Yeah.
I think it's probably worse at 51st because you have all the traffic coming down from 58th, and so it gets really, really congested.
And Rebecca, I'll send you a meeting recording. I know that you've joined these meetings relatively recently, but you know, this area from 51st to 47th is going to be reconstructed starting around September of this year with current schedule. And this intersection is going to get redone and aligned. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
they just can't do it soon enough for us, I guess.
yeah. Yep.
Hurry up and wait.
Well, I don't know if this, the timing on the light changes at both those intersections, 47th, well, 45th, 47th. I don't know if it would be a good idea to have somebody do a checkup. Because I think that the timing in those lights, those three intersections, like 52nd, 50, well, frankly, all of them, I think they're not meeting current conditions. And I
Okay.
don't know how long ago that timing was set. The turn signals there at 45th, are real sketchy as far as being at a good cadence for the volume of people that turn. I usually have to go through 2 or 3 cycles going
Yeah.
through there at high traffic. Can that be accelerated?
Yeah, it's a great comment, AE, and so good to hear your voice. It's been a long time. But good to hear
Jennifer,
that you're still in the neighborhood. So yes, I think that is such an amazingly smart comment, and that's something that we don't you know, look at, I think, as often as we should. And it's simple operations in our signal. And I think, you know, team capturing the comment that it's the entire corridor. And A, we'll go back and look within the Washington Street scope and ensure that that's in there. If it's not, certainly, you know, something that we can look into and start to program, but very smart way of handling congestion and safety improvements along a corridor. Washington is part of our high energy network, and something that we're doing on Federal right now, Colorado, Alameda. So let us look into that. It's a
that's
great
great.
suggestion.
Thanks, Jennifer.
I'm also willing to take that up with the DOTI project management team on Washington as well, and bring that forward to them, that that's a concern and something to look at as that project is implemented.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Brian,
Brian. I would be surprised if it wasn't part of scope, but let's check. Thanks for doing that.
Totally.
I'll definitely follow up on that.
Rebecca, I do want to come back and before we go over to Elyria Swansea, because I do want to make sure that we hit on that other side of the community. Last meeting, you mentioned that the I-70 and Lincoln improvements that were installed were leading to some congestion, and I want to make sure that we're kind of noting that with this project team. There were some traffic calming measures added under I-70 in Lincoln, and there is just a ton of different, you know, this is Globeville Main Street, and then you have Garden Place Academy here. So there's just a really high incident of like congestion around like school start, school ending time. And Angela, I see your hand is raised.
Oh, do you want me to talk?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, could we get a little, like maybe 10 extra seconds added to the bag buttons? I think it's 30 seconds to cross the street. That's not enough time, especially on Washington. Especially if it snows and you're trying to cross the street. And then people get frustrated and they honk at you. So if we at least had some extra time on the bag buttons on the time to be able to cross the street, that would be great. I think currently it's 30 seconds. That's just not enough time. Again, like if it snows, or if you're like me, you can't walk well. If you're a mom and you have your stroller and your children with you, if you're a wheelchair, it's just really difficult, and it's scary. because people want to make that turn while you're still crossing the street.
Yep. Okay.
Is it just to follow up with what Angela said? So is there a specific time limit that's allowed on those things, or I don't even know how that works.
It's 30 seconds you have by, because I always hit the beg button. And now I understand why it's called a beg button, because you're basically begging to cross the street and not get run over. The little person will show up on the screen, whatever that thing is called, and then you start going.
Yeah.
By the time you're like maybe not even halfway across, you don't even hit the median, it's already blinking 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And so you got to try and scramble to cross the street. And I'm assuming it's the same thing on 47.
Chad, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah. You're Hispanic in a panic over here in Swansea.
Let's move over to Elyria Swansea.
No, you can't get there, Chris. You can't get there safely.
So connectivity across.
Stay where you're at, Chris.
Okay.
Because I was going to ask about that Washington Street improvements, prioritized improvement. Are they going to have bicycle crossing signals at any of those intersections you've just been talking about, 45th, 47th, or the new 48th Avenue bridge where it crosses where it's going to cross Washington Street and/or points north? Any bicycle crossing improvements, signals, that is?
Yeah.
Let me, Chad, it might take me a minute. Let me open up the plans on that and let's see if I can answer that for you. I'll come back.
What's your name?
Brian. I'm Brian Perry.
Okay. You can get back to me.
Yeah.
So going also, Chris, is you're talking about going over to Elyria and Swanson. I didn't get in here early, so you guys were talking about heavy traffic. Was there more to it that we could talk about or ask about?
Yeah, you can contribute any input around,
Okay, well then East 46th Avenue over in the 900 block east, 46th Avenue, that's immediately east of it's right by Denco where it curves around.
like right by York and Josephine almost.
Ask again.
Is it right by York and Josephine? Where's Dencall?
No, 950
Denco
east
is also Washington. So it's like it's from Globeville going towards Elyria. So it's behind the 7-Eleven, the Pizza Hut.
Let me go
right here.
Yeah, right over the river. It's the National Western Drive for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
At 46th Avenue East.
Yep.
So yeah, right about there.
And Chad, I know you raised before this underpass area.
Yeah. So if I talked about it once, is that going to be good enough to try to get it some attention?
Let's get your thoughts on it now, because we're really capturing and we have some resources.
Yeah, I like this setup that you guys have.
Oh, good.
But on the Google Maps, when you guys look at it, or if you ride over, a couple of things, of course, is since we're working our way east, at immediately east of the river overpass on 46th Avenue.
Right here.
Yeah. The overpass under the highway along 46th Avenue. There is a sidewalk that was there years ago, and it runs from the from east of the Burlington Northern tracks. It runs west, going towards Den Cole slash Washington Street, and there it is so damaged. What they call them is a bridge expansion. And so the bridge expansion is in place, but the sidewalk is dropped close to 8 to 10 inches. So you couldn't go there, use that sidewalk if you were in a wheelchair or a scooter, if you wanted to be off 46th Avenue roadway, which is you know, we really like to see the bike lanes along 46th Avenue there. Okay, so that's a big problem right there on that bridge over the river. And I noticed they might have expanded the curb cut on the west side of that same bridge, leading onto the Platte River Trail, which is great. It looks like they did that, so that's good. And then okay, then after that, going back east to the National Western Drive and the bridge, well, even before the bridge, we start talking about that underpass, is that crossing, the street crossing on 46th Avenue across National Western Drive. I think there really needs to be some improvement there because there's blind spots, because you're coming out from underneath that dark tunnel.
Yeah, yep.
Trying to turn onto National Western, and then you got traffic coming in and out, motorized traffic of all sizes, shapes, and forms. And so if you're on a bicycle, and if they ever get the lights on under the tunnel and somebody's coming through either on foot or skates or bicycles through the sidewalk part of the underpass, it gets dangerous. Which again then leads us several more feet to the east, the whole issue about no lighting underneath that underpass, underneath that railroad trestle.
Yeah.
And you know what it's been said is that, well, the railroad doesn't want to, you know, they're non-communicative, or they got more power than the city of Denver, than the state of Colorado. But how can you say that? Can the National Western, with that $35 million Reconnecting Neighborhoods grant that they got from the feds, they are literally going to rebuild the National Western crossing, railroad crossing, just 500-600 feet north of that underpass on National Western Drive. So how could they get that approved with the railroad if we can't get something done with the lighting underneath there, underneath that same trestle?
Yep.
Talk to me, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is a really challenging area in the sense that, you know, you have CDOT with highways that maintain their own underpasses. You have the railroad that has their own kind of, you know, area that they maintain. And right, this is like a constant thing that I hear from community about, is just like how challenging it is, even with 311, because 311 limits the location of different issue reporting. So I don't know, Paige, maybe we work with the 311 team on routing or something like that, those types of tickets, because yeah, it's pretty challenging for folks to figure out how to report these issues. And certainly, yeah,
Well,
heard Chad.
You're not saying that roadway hasn't been turned over to the city and county after decades, have you?
The 46th in that area under the rail bridge.
Yes. And that trestle itself.
Yeah, we'll
The
maintain it
underside
in
of it.
certain ways. We'll do like graffiti removal or covering. But yeah, some of that like harder, like hardwired infrastructure, like lights, it's definitely, I've run into the same challenges as I think you have, Chad, around it, and definitely would love to take a look at that.
Well, I thought we've been looking at it for generations.
Yeah,
I thought this was the time to move forward.
we will. Yeah, I think we can at least come up with a concrete, plan.
I want to put if I may, an exclamation point on what Chad is saying. And every time I hear you, Chris, say, yeah, I've heard that a lot, and it's challenging. I'm going, well, that's what our transportation infrastructure, it's here for. I want you to meet the challenge. I want this. We had the same thing go when we put up the safety bridge. It was a really kind of an exciting learning experience, the safety bridge at 47th and York. Who has what jurisdiction? That's the job of, meet the challenge. You guys have, it's challenging to live with it. So I would rather hear, yeah, this is the problem we see. This is what we need to do. And you're right, Chad. It's the conversations have been going on, and I think it's helpful for there to be progress reports around how relationships are forming among the various jurisdictions that are going to create the problem in coordination, getting that information out into the neighborhoods that says the city has talked to the state, has talked to and this is the plan. Give it to us iteratively. I don't get any reassurance hearing a staff person or an engagement person say, oh yeah, that is challenging. I've heard it a lot. Let's change that energy. Let's just make the problem the formula for solving the problem. And if there's something that can happen in 311 that helps smooth it in the background there, yeah, but I don't want to make it more complex for the people making the calls in. It's the job for the people making the calls in is to give the coordinates to tell where it is on the train, and that's it, and what the situation is. But
yeah, I would agree.
So I just put a big exclamation point on that.
Yeah, thank you, A. And Chad, I think you joined a little bit late, but I'm Jen Hillas. I'm the Director of Transportation Mobility Planning for DOTI. And so love the comments there. And lighting, if you were asking us to build a new bridge, move the bridge, I've heard other people say, railroads are even higher than God. It's like God, water, and then the railroads are there. So they are challenging, but we're making some good movements with them, and a good suggestion on, being more transparent about those relationships. Lighting is something that we can look into. And wanted to know if the ped path is also of interest to you, or is it the vehicle lanes that you see the most challenge?
Ask that first part of that question again.
Yeah, in the division, how the sidewalk is divided from the vehicle lanes. Are you seeing the same challenges in lighting for both the pedestrians and bicyclists and the vehicles?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. We'll capture it.
Well, and then there's the maintenance. Then there's the maintenance of the actual walkway on the raised section of the walkway above the in the underside of the trestle bridge. And there's very little lighting on the roadway also.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Been that way for decades, right? But like I say, help me to understand. I mean, if National Western or the grant, whoever got the grant, administering the grant, reconnecting neighborhoods, and they're going to rebuild a crossing on National Western, just like I said, and I'm repeating again, north of or 46th Avenue, they've had to work with the railroad, Burlington Northern, right? Well, why aren't we working to try to get?
Yes, and the good news is on lighting, we wouldn't have to work with them. We'll have to look into the utilities right where we pull, but really all they care about is the structure above and them being able to move. It's when you start to expand or change, but the maintenance and all of that underneath is very little coordination with them. And you're right, certainly Marion Underpass, Betty Cram is being reconstructed, good opportunity there, and that was decades in the working, right? So it takes a long time to make those big moves, but something we're certainly willing to lean into as needed, right? But I think, here we'll look into it, figuring out the CDOT side compared to the city side. But I think railroads would likely be pretty limited in our coordination, but let us confirm that and we'll document it and see what those possibilities are.
Okay, let me add this then. Let me add this so we can go further. You can go I was reading a book from Mrs. McMillan. She wrote a book quite a while back called Elyria, the Forgotten Neighborhood. Yeah. And she stated how hard it was even before Elyria was annexed to the city of Denver, and then after, how hard it was to get any improvements done. And it goes on to say, one of the few times Elyria won its battle for safe crossings over the many train tracks that surrounded it was in 1902. So thanks a lot for listening.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I do know we're at 7:22, and we did want to make sure that we share some construction updates to Rebecca, your point earlier, you know, soon is not soon enough. So we do want to share some info because there will be some kind of significant detours on Washington Street. I do want to say though that well, one, I think this conversation was really valuable, and I'm really excited to kind of have this conversation again. We'll definitely be programming another meeting and broadcasting it a little bit wider, but I appreciate this kind of like small group input as well, because I think we're getting some really good feedback on some, you know, long time challenges that, you know, we have some resources to kind of look at right now. And yeah, I just want to say, like, I hear the frustration, and I understand it on some of these items as well. So appreciate it.
Real quickly, Chad, to answer your question on the bike lane, there is not a bike lane in the Washington Street project. There is, however, sidewalks on both sides, but there is not a dedicated bike lane.
And they will be, Chad, they'll be shared use sidewalks. So there will be like
they're large
striping, yeah, to differentiate between bike areas. So there's that.
Maybe you misunderstood the question then, because I was talking about getting east to west across from east to west on Washington or across Washington Street at those intersections.
Okay.
So, well, were you going to move into Elyria and Swansea for a little while there, Chris?
We were, but the meeting does end at 7:30. Chad, I would love to set up a special meeting between you, me, and kind of the project team to talk through the Elyria Swansea components. And we can do it in a broader setting as well if you would prefer. But I think I'm really excited to hear, because of your like focus on Elyria Swansea, some kind of like specific special time for it.
So, Chris, I just want to make a suggestion, and I know we're out of time. Chad is making a really great contribution. I'm sure meet with everybody individually, but there is something that happens when we hear each other. And I feel like one of the remedies to a longstanding problem that perhaps can happen now, I'm going to say this for the 65th time, is if the team that is the listening part of this could add to the graphics the things that were just discussed as integrated documented awarenesses into the next meeting, and that the part of the summary opening would be, here's what we've moved up on the priorities for attention, and we'd like to get additional input on that. And I definitely, you know, feel like that would give people a sense of true engagement. So I'd like to suggest that, and that it's very helpful for people to hear what other people are saying. I learned something from Chad every time I hear, because I'm mostly in Globeville. So yeah, it's exciting to meet with him. But let's build the depth of communication among the neighbors as a priority.
Yeah. Maybe next meeting, I might propose that it is just like an Elyria Swansea focus on transportation improvements. Not that we will restrict comments on Globeville, but yeah, really focusing on that.
Yeah, but give an overall summary of the progress of this meeting, which includes what we've just discussed in Gloveville, keep the context, and then create the balance of the proportion of time given.
Yeah, agreed. Got it. Chad, did you have another comment or is your hand just still up?
Yeah, I didn't, I'm not real keen on all this stuff. I'm getting meetinged out, and there has been talk about some the planning on being able to do some things, not immediately, but in the short term. And so hopefully we can talk about that before too long, before burnout real sets in, and you guys will be smiling and happy as hell that I'm off your back. But I think some immediate things could be, you know, I wanted to say something about that that drifting that's going on up there at East 52nd at Monroe and stuff, because they started putting out barricades, some cones at least, to try to divert traffic. And we're talking about East 52nd Avenue, and that's a main thoroughfare into Swans. So that, you know, if I'm going to put up any cones out here, I need to have a permit, and I know they don't. And then of course the other thing is the smoke and the there's going to be runoff of them burnt tires and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the other thing before I will let you guys go. I think you ought to have some longer meetings. I know it's late in the evening, but you know, anyway,
yeah.
The garbage truck traffic through the neighborhood from the waste disposal of the transfer station at East 54th and Jackson Street, when the corporation, the company Waste Connections, leaves that site and they come through Swansea to get over to York Street. They're coming through the different blocks from East 54th, and some's got to be done. And like I said just the other day, it seems to me that something could happen relatively soon with the proper weight enforcement, law enforcement type activities. That it just seemed like it could happen.
Yeah.
So only one more question is, how do you like me now?
Chad, I am so glad that we've met through this planning process, and I'm so glad that Alan has introduced you to this planning process. I think you're raising really important items, and I think it's just the perfect timing because we have a project that is able to listen and kind of resource improvements. And I don't know, Paige, if you have other comments, but yeah.
Yeah, you said it all, Chris. Yeah. And Chad, we've been recording all of your comments, and maybe we just share those with you to show that we're documenting them, because you've given such great feedback about bike connectivity, and you're talking about waste management now, so that's also very helpful. So thank you.
Well, with that, let's jump over. And Chad, I'll give you a call tomorrow to talk about next steps and like how you would like to kind of talk about Elyria Swansea. But I do want to make sure that we get these construction updates shared and published to the YouTube account, just so that folks who listen to the YouTube videos have those updates. So I am going to hand it over to Nora. And give me one moment to just get the PowerPoint back up on the screen. All right. Sharing. All right.
Thanks, Chris. I'll be very quick because you all have been with us through dinner. So we'll whiz through this. You've been hearing about these construction projects for a while now. Lincoln Underpass open and the lights are being installed this week. That will officially close that project. Heron Pond, as you've all seen, under construction as we speak. Heavy freight traffic moving in and out of the site in order to set it up for full construction, and it remains closed to the public through early 2026. The levee is under construction again as we speak. What you're going to see in terms of neighborhood impact is intermittent lane closures on Washington from 46th to 50th. The reason being that the South Platte River Trail is going to close to accommodate the levee construction, and bikes and peds will be detoured onto Washington Street temporarily. That detour opens March 10th, is hopefully with no snow between now and then. The 48th Avenue Greenway, the outfall has been designed and will be built in October, but the greenway itself is in design currently with construction in 2026. And then 51st Avenue and Washington Street, you're going to see a lot of what we call pre-construction, which is utility work. Denver Water, Excel, Comcast, doing the work under the street in preparation for construction, reconstruction of Washington Street and 51st, starting at the end of this year. So we will keep the community updated with regards to construction to the best of our abilities in a timely manner. We know how much is going on at the same time, immediately adjacent to one another. But this is the latest in terms of construction updates. To stay abreast of construction updates, bit.ly/GES projects is where you can get the latest and greatest information.
Thank you, Nora.
Yeah, I hope that was quick enough.
Yeah. Any questions from folks on the call? Rebecca, I saw you came off mute for a second, but.
No, I was just gonna say that was quick and painless.
Appreciate
it. We aim to please.
Yes. Awesome. Well, again, I really appreciate time and energy, and I know that you took time out of your evening to join our meeting today, and I do understand how frustrating it can be sometimes to kind of continue to provide feedback. But I think we have some really great opportunities to make some improvements through this North Denver Safer Streets project, and really appreciate you all kind of bearing with us as we get some resources to Globeville and Elyria Swansea. Our next meeting will be May 2025. We'll be announcing the date here in the next few weeks. And then our next typical kind of traditional community advisory group meeting, where we'll talk about some other topics, will be in April 2025. So you'll get some information about those upcoming meetings. And Chad, I'll give you a call and talk about next steps tomorrow about getting some more feedback if you want to provide that. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts?
No, I thank you guys, because I know it's a lot. We got a bunch of different aspects of the community, a bunch of different perspectives. So, I feel confident that our voice is being heard, and I just, I want to thank you guys, because I know that could be a challenge for you as well. Some of these meetings, it might seem, that we kind of voice our opinions out of emotions, and sometimes it could be. So I appreciate you guys, continuing to do your work and really allowing us to be involved, because it really does go a long way.
Appreciate that, Rebecca.
Yeah, those are great words, Rebecca.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great evening, and we will obviously be in touch.
Thanks
Bye,
so much for your
everyone.
time. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.